So Kagurabachi, I have talked in length about this series. In fact, I've talked, I think, up to about literally just 2 volumes of the manga. I have read up to volume 4, volume 5, and volume 5. Past that point, because volume 1 through, well, actually, volume 1 through 2 is basically all that I've talked about so far. Actually, what I'm going to be talking about is actually what consists in volume 3, because they introduce a new character here, and I don't. This arc, or this following arc for Kagurabaki, is a little bit longer than, well, the Sojo arc. I called them Choso last video, but the Sojo arc is a little bit shorter than this. This is going to be a little bit lengthier, a lot more lore, a lot more things to take into consideration in this next arc. That basically is all 3 of these volumes, volume 3 through 5. But I'm not going to go full. I'm going to split the whole arc into 2 videos. This first video, I'm going to talk about a character that they introduce in these arcs that is going to be a very important character for the whole thing, and that is Hakuri Sazanami. Hakuri Sazanami is a new character that's basically introduced in volume 3, right after following the battle with Chihiro and Sojo, because his part into this story is actually his call to action is because of what Chihiro did in his first encounter with Sojo in the public eye. He was actually a bystander that was in there that was basically, I want to say, like, inspired by Chihiro. And so his whole thing is like, oh, I can't just lay down and be this wimp that I've always been, because this guy literally saved my life. And that was Chihiro, because he took a full blast of the Enchanted Blade Cloud Gouger's attack that basically saved everybody in that behind Chihiro in his vicinity. And one of those people was Hakuri. So it's actually interesting to see that, because this sort of lays a perfect establishing point for him to get involved in to the gang and talk to Chihiro and the group and be like, well, you guys are looking for this thing. My name is actually Hakuri Sazanami. And they find out that they're actually trying to in order to get this, well, enchanted blade that's up for auction, which is obviously Chihiro's main goal, is to get all of the enchanted blades in his possession for his father's, I guess not his father's will, but to him it's almost like his father's will, where he wants to make sure that the enchanted blades aren't really used for any mispurpose or misfortune or things like that, because obviously he had that in front of him with Sojo and the Cloud Gouger, which I believe he took into his possession. And then you have the Kamunabi in his tracks. Obviously, they don't want Chihiro to be having all these enchanted blades. I'm pretty sure they are the ones that want full possession of these enchanted blades, and so they're going to also partake into the auction to try to buy the blade. But obviously, Chihiro does not want to purchase the blade and go the Kamunabi's route. He wants to actually infiltrate and take the blade by force, and he thinks that there's no way that he can just let something like this happen, and he'd rather just stop it all right and just get the blade and make sure that nothing, because obviously once they find out about the auction, they find out that it's not just like an auction for the enchanted blade. The enchanted blade is just obviously the main event of the auction, but they are at the auction itself is actually basically an underground, darker trading, event for literally all the filth of the earth, to purchase humans, to purchase all types of things, and Chihiro's not with it at all, and he stumbles upon Hakuri, and him and Hakuri, he's on his way to infiltrate, and then him and Hakuri cross paths, and then in meeting Hakuri, he finds out that, hey, wait a second, you might have some information that we actually might need. And so stumbling across Hakuri, and Hakuri obviously takes a liking to Chihiro, because he's like, wait a second, this the dude that saved my life. And so one thing leads to another. Both of them are in their paths. They start talking about, the Sazanami and what the Sazanami is, because the Sazanami is a clan that is actually holding the auction, and they've been known to hold the auction for years, for since the auction's basically beginning, and Hakuri is part of that clan. So this is their ticket way in, and so they almost use Hakuri, but obviously Chihiro's a little bit more of a kind-hearted person. We've seen that in the last arc with Sojo with the little girl, where he protects her and chooses basically to be her guardian without, any second thought, because obviously the Chihiro just is that kind of guy. But the interesting with Hakuri, and I really like the dynamic between him and Chihiro and what they have, is because Chihiro's like this darker, brooding character. Obviously, the series starts out with him saying he wakes up and only thinks about revenge. Like he's basically Sasuke if Sasuke was the MC, right? But Hakuri is Naruto. So we're basically getting like a reverse story here. So we're getting Chihiro, who is basically the Sasuke equivalent, and Hakuri, who is basically the Naruto equivalent, and they cross paths, and their dynamic is very, very entertaining, because Hakuri is almost like a little brother to Chihiro, basically. Chihiro's like, at this point, Chihiro's just taking people in like Batman. I mean, his personality, I'm leaning it akin towards Sasuke, just for the simple fact of it's shonen. But realistically, this is feeling like Batman, and Hakuri is his Robin. That's what it feels like. It feels like homegirl that he met first. That's his first Robin. He took her in. This is his second Robin. He's taking him in. But this Robin's going to actually be in part taking some of the action. It doesn't appear so at the beginning, because the only thing that we see of Hakuri opening up this sort of arc is that he's a failure, that he's basic. And this is coming from him as well. So he's been indoctrinated to believe this because of what he went through with his clan and with his family. He has no potential, is what he believes. He cannot do anything with his spirit energy, is what he believes. And he's basically been relegated to just like this third-rate family member who's not actually a part of the family, because he can't contribute in that sense, which is actually an interesting dynamic because of what we see later on in the arc, once they actually infiltrate the auction. Because what they do next is actually just go straight for the Sazanami clan, and they just straight up just go straight to the boss. And they're like, yo, we want this enchanted blade, basically. We're going to take it by force. And it ends up being like this big encounter, and Hakuri runs into his older brother. And it's interesting because you see they start having this small battle, and Chihiro runs into an ultimatum, basically, because they have Hakuri in possession, and knowing Chihiro and his relationship with these characters, he has one choice: either to try and get this enchanted blade from the auction before the auction even happens, which is plan A, or strike a deal with the head of the Sazanami and save Hakuri's life. And you could probably guess what Chihiro ends up doing, okay? So at the end of this little squabble, because they both go their separate ways, Chihiro and crew infiltrate the Sazanami, go straight to it, but the head of the Sazanami clan has a little bit of up his sleeve, because they have the Toa, I believe what they're called, which is basically all of his children in this little sort of almost like Akatsuki type vibe shit. Like they're a group. And, Chihiro is basically put in a position where he's like, they're not really going to get out unscathed, and they might even lose. So at that point, like I said, he gets put into a situation where Hakuri is captured, and he has two options, and he chooses to go one way. And that way that he chooses to go does save Hakuri's life, but means that his N10 gets taken. So his enchanted blade, is now up for auction. And so we're leading towards that auction now happening, and now his blade, on top of the blade they're already trying to recover, is now as well up for auction. And the head of the Kamunabi clan thinks this is great, because this guy's been causing so much traction. Word around the street, this blade is actually could be worth a lot more, and now we're gonna get more eyes on the auction, right? For Chihiro, it's like, well, I can't let Hakuri die. He's actually really important to our plan. He's like an insider that knows all the information on this clan, and the only way that we could even possibly do anything is with him. So he sees him as a valuable piece. At least that's what he thinks. But at the same time, Homeboy was not going to let him die. I mean, you know what I mean? That big brother, little brother aspect is just, he just wasn't going to do that. But another interesting thing that I'm going to lead on to, going into this auction arc, which is, it ramps up in this auction arc. Can't wait to talk about it. But in that, Chihiro doesn't do this without a backup plan. Now, this backup plan that he has is sort of like contingent on his capabilities with the spirit energy and his relationship with his blade. And I talked about that a little bit in the last video. By the way, I'm going to link the past videos at the end of this one. But basically, he's going to try and take control of his blade within wherever they hold the blade in the a storage room, which is what is talked about of where all these things are stored. And he's going to try to sort of figure out where exactly it is so that he can go and not only get his blade back, but also get the other blade. And it's actually really cool because you see now, obviously with this battle with Sojo, Chihiro has a little bit more capabilities when it comes to understanding his blade and being able to wield it and use his spirit energy. And so this is going to be another test for him. Can he control it without actually having it in his possession? But anyways, that's that little mini arc that I wanted to talk about before the auction, because the auction is the bigger, obviously climactic part of the arc where, everything's going to go down for these volumes. Like I said, what I've talked about so far is in volume 3. Next video, what I'm going to talk about is everything that's contained in volume 4 and volume 5. That's how I'm going with these videos. I'm basically going off of volumes. If it takes a minute for after next video, that's because, like I said, I'm going off of volumes. Be patient with me. But if you like this video, if you like me talking about Kagurabachi, if you like Kagurabachi just in general, if you're hyped up for the anime, because all of this stuff is going to be so sick once it gets animated, let me know down in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe so you can get more content about Kagurabachi. Don't forget to like the video so more Kagurabachi fans can see it. And yeah, that's all I got for y'all, folks. I'll see you guys in that next video where I talk about the auction for this arc of Kagurabachi. Don't miss it.